Hello everyone, I'm Mike Connors, and welcome to How It Ticks, the go-to podcast for anyone with a spark of curiosity about the inner workings of Switzerland. Hosted by yours truly, an Australian expat with a deep curiosity, How It Ticks offers a platform where listeners are invited to explore the vast landscape of Swiss culture, business, innovation, and tradition. Each episode features a one-on-one interview with experts and thought leaders from various fields, providing a panoramic view of what makes Switzerland tick. If you are like me and you enjoy listening to successful people share their insights, this podcast is for you. My guest today is Patricia Schafer, a Swiss political scientist, civic educator, and militia politician who has built her career around understanding and participating in Switzerland's political system. She currently works at Avenir Suisse, serves on a municipal council, and previously supported parliamentary commissions at the federal level. Switzerland is famous for its direct democracy, but what does that actually mean in practice? Given that there are no systems quite like it, what makes political life in Switzerland so different? In this episode, Patricia helps unpack the inner workings of Swiss democracy, from how new laws are introduced to the somewhat unique concept of the militia system, where many politicians hold public office whilst continuing their day jobs. We also explore the structure of the Federal Council. Whilst it's widely known that its 7 members reflect diversity in party, region, and even gender, fewer people may realise that this balance is based on no more than a gentleman's agreement that's held for almost 70 years. We discuss why Switzerland was so late in granting women the right to vote and what this means for civic participation today. This conversation really is a crash course in how Swiss democracy functions and why it might be one of the most unusual and effective systems in the world. Now, here is my conversation with Patricia Schafer. Patricia, welcome to How It Ticks. How are you doing?
Hi, Mike. I'm doing good. I hope you too.
So tell me, what is a direct democracy? Can you define it for me?
What is a direct democracy? So I think it's the opposite of representative democracy, I would say. So actually it's just the people that should have the say, make the laws, decide on different issues, and not the politicians that you elect for that.
Okay, so most other Western countries have what you call a representative democracy.
Yeah, there are some countries that also have some sort of direct democratic instruments. I mean, we also have a representative democracy, but there's not the perfect direct democratic democracy, but it's just the representative democracy with direct democratic elements, I would say. I mean, Switzerland has the largest extent of direct democratic instruments compared to, in the world. I mean, most of the votes that take place, they take place in Switzerland. Even though it's such a small country, we make up for the most of the direct democratic votes that actually happen in the world. So
I did a quick check before this call, which other countries in the world were considered a direct democracy at the federal level. And it seems like the only other country is Uruguay. There are a few others.
Uruguay.
There's a few others in Europe which are at a state and cantonal level, such as Germany, and even Italy, I think, was there. But Uruguay's the only other one.
Or the US.
The US as well, exactly. Why do you think that Switzerland's special?
Yeah, probably it has to do a lot with history, how it evolved over time. Earlier on, it was just many different cantons, and then they came together, and it was always a bit this bottom-up principle. It was not the top-down. I think if you organize something from top-down, then it's probably much less likely that something like that would evolve. But when it's more that it comes bottom-up, it's quite natural that people should also have a say. So I think it has a lot to do with that, how it got organized. And it also has a lot to do, it's the bottom-up thing. It has a lot to do probably with federalism, decentralization, that you're really you came from very small jurisdictions that you organized yourself. And there, the most natural way was just to meet and to discuss on the issues that you have to discuss on. So that's what's still happening today quite often in the municipalities, are these town meetings, which is actually like the most natural form of direct democracy. So there actually people meet, they discuss on different issues, and they decide on different issues. That's also how it's made in the municipality where I'm in the municipal council. So they're actually like the legislative power is just in the town meetings. And so I think it's a very natural way when you come from these small jurisdictions to decide just in this direct way, because you're small, you don't really have, you maybe don't even have enough people to form a parliament. So I think it's a very natural way.
How does a direct or a form of a direct democracy impact the culture of politics?
How direct democracy impacts the culture of politics? That's a very huge question. I think it changed quite everything because first of all, it makes sure that politicians somehow need to follow what the people want. And so it's like a control instrument. On the other hand, it also has some sort of innovation character, I would say, because there may be things that come into politics which would otherwise not enter the political agenda. And what I think is very interesting and important is that it somehow, I think it brings down politics to a less emotional thing. So because you have to decide on really some topics, so it's a clear issue that you decide on. So you can really have pro and contra arguments. And that means you cannot just decide on, I want this party, but really you have to make up your mind about certain issues. And I think that really helps to bring down the discussion to less emotional things. I mean, there might be that some ballots that you vote on are quite emotional, but I think in total the political culture then gets less emotional, which might also help that we don't have too much polarization. I mean, there are some extent of polarization in Switzerland as well, of course, but that people can really talk to each other. It's not just the two-party system where you have the right against the left, but you can really find maybe people from the right who are in one topic, they have the same opinion as you have. And then you can see that you can also find each other like that. And I think that's an important thing as well.
What types of decisions are typically made through a public vote and which are handled by elected officials?
Yeah, there are different ways that can lead to a public vote. So we have, on the one hand, we have these initiatives, which are the popular initiatives, which means people can collect signatures, 100,000, and then this initiative in the end goes through parliament, and then in the end people vote on that. But that's only, these initiatives, they're only for changes in the constitution and not laws. But on the other hand, most of the laws, they pass through the parliament, and most of the time it's the federal council that makes some proposition of how to change law. Then that goes to the parliament, so to the two chambers, they discuss on that. And then in the end, there can be a referenda and you can vote on that. So, and then it also goes to a popular vote. But those are like different ways. And most of the time it's like initiatives, they're mostly, it's just one smaller topic that gets brought to the political agenda via this instrument. And from the propositions that come from the Federal Council and the parliaments, those are mostly like the larger packages where you really make a huge change of law. So those are mostly the more complicated votes then in the end, I guess, because they're super packed and just like the big changes to the laws.
So I guess these initiatives where people get the information packet in their mail, they have to be simple enough or digestible to the average person to be able to follow and understand and clearly make a decision.
Yes, that's the idea, but quite often it's also not like that. That's also one of the criticisms, probably. I mean, that sometimes it's formulated not very clear. I mean, which is quite clear because it's for the constitution, so it's for constitutional changes. And when it's formulated too clearly, then one would say it has more the type of a law, why it would not need to be written in the constitution. And that's why it's quite often also formulated very broadly, so that it's not that clear how it, like, what the impact would be in the end. So that's also why quite often there comes the criticism that we have this problem that we write things into the constitution via the initiatives, which would actually not, I mean, they don't really have the type of a constitutional character. And that's why we also already suggested that one should also have the law initiatives. So where you can really propose concrete laws and not just constitutional changes. So also changes in laws.
Can you explain to me the difference between a change to the constitution and introducing a new law?
Yeah, I mean, the constitution there should really be just the basic things, how the state is organized and how the governance is organized, and really just the basic things. But and the laws, they are very concrete to special topics. And for instance, we had the question on this horned cow initiative.
Mm.
So this initiative wanted to ask that farmers should get financial initiatives that they keep the natural horns of the cows or the goats. And if something like that then would be written in the constitution, I mean, you can do that. It's no problem.
But just on that, I'm just curious then. So if it does get added to the constitution that farmers do get financial incentive to.
That got rejected.
I did. Okay. Well,
that got rejected.
Okay. But say if it did, it's in the constitution, so there is no law saying that they do need to get financial incentive or they need to follow it. What does that mean in terms of what the outcome needs to be?
Yeah, I mean, that's then the question. I think in general, there should then be some laws that follow this constitutional thing. But that's also another problem. You can vote on that issue, and then in the end, it's how it's actually implemented and how it's actually be implemented in the law in the end. That's then the parliament that decides on that again. And there we had actually a huge discussion also about, there was the mass immigration initiative that was from the Swiss People's Party. They wanted just to have some immigration quotas, and that got accepted quite long time ago. I think it's more than 10 years. And then how it actually gets implemented, that's then something else. It's then written in the constitution, but it still needs to have some laws that then really decide how that works. And yeah, that also gets, quite often people are then not happy or satisfied how it actually gets implemented. And I mean, there also a possibility would be that we would change the rules like that also initiatives that get accepted, that in the end, one would also need to vote on actually how it gets implemented, so that you will have a vote again on the implementation, because that's not the case in general. So one would need to, start a new initiative.
I see. So you get something added to the constitution, the people pushing that are very happy, and then the laws that follow, because how it is written in the constitution was a bit ambiguous, the laws actually aren't written the way they want them to, therefore making them potentially unhappy, motivating them to try to make another change.
Yeah, maybe it can be summarized like that.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and I think, I mean, one possibility would really be that you will just, that there's just a fixed rule that that the people will vote again on the issue, how it gets implemented in the end, like in the laws. So not just the initiative beforehand, but also then about the implementation again. I think that would help a lot.
Okay, so the people vote for the change in the constitution, but how the rules are set, the people currently don't have a say in.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. You can also have referenda in the end, so
Mm.
that the laws passed by parliament, they get that there's going to be a referenda again, and then people can vote on this law again.
How frequent are the referendums typically?
So we usually vote 4 times a year. Yeah, no, 3 times. So February, June, November, September. Yeah, 4 times usually. And yeah, and it then depends on how many. I mean, there can be some 3 votes, just 1 vote. It depends a bit on what's ready to get voted on. But usually, yeah, every 2-3 months there are some votes on the federal level, and then there sometimes you have on the cantonal level at the same time also some votes, and sometimes even on the municipal level. But yeah, that really depends on the cantons of how much votes there are.
Mm. Yeah. Could I make a change to the constitution? In theory.
You?
Yeah.
As an Australian?
Say, okay, in this, okay, as a foreigner, I understand no. Say, could you personally decide that, okay, I want shops to be open on Sunday? Is there a path for you to follow that in theory is possible for you to make that possible?
So shops open on Sunday, I think that goes to the to the competence of the cantons. So that would not be on the federal level. There you would probably need to go on the cantonal level, but there you also have these possibilities usually. On the cantonal levels, you would have in most cantons the possibility to make not only constitutional initiatives, but also a law initiative. And I think there one would need to collect signatures, but like the threshold of how many signatures you need to collect, I mean, that also, yeah, is quite different between the different cantons, but also like on the federal level, if you want to start an initiative, it's 100,000 signatures that you need. In theory, just one single person can start that, but it's quite hard still. I mean, usually you need to be very well organized so that you're able to do that. So I mean, just the idea that just one single person can just start that and do that and perfect, but I think it's not that easy. In theory, yes. And I mean, on the local levels, if you're really on the local levels, then it gets much easier. So for instance, if we, in the municipality where I'm in the council, there we have these town meetings twice a year, usually. And there all the people from the municipality can come and they can meet. And so we have like the different topics that we need to discuss, but also in the end, everybody can just drop some ideas that he wants to change or whatsoever. I mean, that's always possible. There you can really bring in your ideas. So I think there it's quite easy actually to bring in new ideas. But I mean, the higher you go, the harder it gets.
I guess that's a good thing.
You guess that's a good thing.
You don't want things changing too frequently. Can you explain to me how the Swiss Federal Council works? Who are its members and how are their responsibilities divided?
Yeah, so I guess you know that the Federal Council consists of 7 members. So it's a bit a different thing than in the other countries or democracies where you have presidents. So really one presidential democracy. So we don't have that, but we have this Federal Council with 7 members. So that's since, 70 years approximately, that we have like this magic formula, which is actually just a gentleman agreement. So that's not written in the constitution or anything. But so the parties, they just agreed on that we have the different parties in this Federal Council. So we have like 2 seats of the Swiss People's Party, 2 seats of the Swiss Democrats, 2 seats of the Middle Party, and 1 of the Liberals, the FDP. And yeah, that's since almost 70 years, I think, like that. So there are the 7 members. They have the responsibility for their department, which they are responsible for, but then the decisions they are made in the council. So the 7 members, they vote on the different topics by majority vote. And every year, one person takes on the role of the president, but it's actually not the president who has a larger say, but it's really just that you have someone who can go to the other countries to say, yeah, I'm here for the federal council. So it's just like this person then takes over a bit this role, this representative role. And yeah, I think that's actually, I mean, that we don't have just one president. That's actually what brings us a lot of stability, as we can see nowadays, because you really need to find a compromise just from the beginning on. I mean, already in the council, there are just the different views, all the different, like the different parties included, and they already need to find some solutions that might be able to really be backed up by a majority, because, yeah. And I mean, that brings a lot of stability. Many people also think it looks quite boring and there's not much going on, and that the federal council is too slow in reacting and whatsoever. I actually think it's a very good thing that we have this very slow decision making and also quite boring decisions sometimes, and not just
Politics should be boring, I think.
yeah. I also think it's better if it's boring. Yeah.
How are there any other ways which these parties are diversified? I can imagine that you would need, fair representation from the different languages, from the different areas of Switzerland. Is that also taken into consideration with who is representative? Who is there?
Yes, that's actually the idea. You always check there is not like a fixed rule that there need to be 3 from the French or Italian speaking part and 3 or 4 women. So it's not the case that it's like that, but you should. Is it written? It's written in the constitution, I guess, that the linguistic or just like the different regions, they should be represented accordingly somehow. But I mean, of course, it cannot always be perfectly looked after that. But usually you have French speaking and German speaking more or less well represented in the council. And nowadays we have someone from the Italian speaking part. But it then gets quite quickly quite complicated if you want to really take into account the regional dimension, then also the gender dimension. And as we could see now, just there was one seat that got the 3 in March from Joel Amherd, and there is now Martin Pfister who took over the seat in the Federal Council. There we have seen that there are actually not that many people that were interested in taking over this role. And if you then have to look after all these other criteria, it can get already quite difficult finding the candidates that can really make sure that all the regions are represented and everything.
In general, does the public get a say in who is elected? If one person's doing a particularly good or bad job, is there anything the public can do to influence their position there?
No. No. Actually, that's something that's quite interesting in Switzerland, because we don't elect the Federal Council directly. So we elect the Parliament, so the National Council and the Council of State. We elect them every 4 years, but then this Federal Assembly, so the Parliament, they actually vote. So they elect the Federal Council. And that's why it also needed like somehow this gentleman agreement and something, because otherwise just the largest party could make sure that they would just have the majority in the council. They would not need to, But it's not the people that vote on that, no. So, but it can happen that federal councils don't get elected again or whatsoever, but that's not the case usually. I mean, usually if you're there, you stay there till you decide that you don't want to do it anymore. But yeah, I mean, we as the people, we cannot do a lot, I would say.
Yeah. Now, one other thing I found very interesting about the Swiss political system is the militia system. And my understanding is that you are a militia politician yourself. Can you explain to me what that is exactly?
So the militia system, militia politics, it's just the idea that we don't have like the professional politicians that are really doing that as their main profession, but that we have people who are having their work, and besides their actual work, they also take over some responsibilities for the state. So as for instance, the positions in the municipal councils, they're mostly made up with people that are really having their other profession besides that. And so there are around, like in the municipalities, there are around 100,000 people, I guess, who are doing stuff for the municipalities. So they're all the government, which usually consists of the 5 to 7 members. And then you have different committees also on the municipal level, so where you also take over some responsibilities. Yeah, and also on the cantonal level, it's still mostly made up really with this militia system. And I think, yeah, that's really just the idea that you have people who take over responsibility in the state, and at the same time, they're also members. Yeah, they're also really in the economy. They are just normal people, and that can help to bring some insight into politics and administration, but also the other way around. So directly from politics to the economy. I think it's a very important aspect of Swiss democracy, but it also has some challenges, of course.
Also, before this conversation, I looked up what other countries have militia system in politics. And once again, Switzerland really does seem to be an outlier. There are a couple of Nordic countries which have traditions in part-time involvement in politics. There is Germany and Austria also have part-time roles, but they don't really extend as broadly in higher levels of politics. So once again, Switzerland's doing something quite special. You outlined a few benefits. What do you think are the drawbacks of this? Some of the implications.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to differ a bit between the local levels, so like really on the local levels and a bit the national levels. So I think there are different challenges that are faced and also different problems. And what's often said on the national level is that we have a bit the problem at the moment that they are still officially militia politicians. So which means they are, I don't know if you have also looked up how much they earn and stuff, but they earn less, for instance, than politicians in other countries, because they are actually not supposed to have that as their full profession. And there you can then, of course, have some problems with lobbying then always come up, so that they are a bit more dependent on special interest groups because they maybe also get some money from there. And yeah, but I mean, there quite some efforts have been done to make sure that there is transparency, so that people can look up what other little mandates these politicians they have, just to make a bit sure that you understand where they come from. And on the local level, you have you have different problems there. It's more the problems that you don't really find the people in smaller municipalities, because it takes a lot of time, and it's usually not, as it still has in quite many municipalities, it has this militia character, so it's really not paid very well quite often. And also people are maybe more involved in their work lives, so it gets more and more difficult to just make that besides that. And so that's also quite often in the media, that some municipalities then even have to force people to do that. So it's really not a free choice. They get elected even if they did not want to do it. So they were not even candidates or anything. But there are some cantons and municipalities that even allow that.
So you think even at the national level, how sustainable is having this militia system in today's political and global environment? Everything seems so fast paced and complicated. If it's really manageable for people only doing this 20% of the time to be able to keep up and provide valuable input, but also keep their own sanity.
On the national level, it's not 20%. They earn less than in many other countries, but they don't earn that less. So they can really, I mean, you can also live with that. And so there are quite many who are doing it more or less full time, or at least as their only part-time job. No, on the national level, it's much more than that, of course. But there were some ideas that you have to force to strengthen a bit the services, for instance, from the parliamentary services, so that you can have a bit more information from the parliament. So which should from the parliamentary services. So it's like the administration of the parliament. And yeah, maybe that you can take away some workload of the politicians by giving them the possibility to have a scientific collaborator or something, which might help them. But that's one of the criticism, but it's also somehow a positive aspect, can also be as a positive aspect, is that the politicians, they also get a lot of information of the lobby group. I think it's a bit a challenge. I mean, the workload has increased and one needs to decide on how to manage that. Because I think it's a very good thing when people have not just this militia system, but also have another profession next to it, because it somehow makes them also a bit less dependent on politics. So they don't need to carry too much to their special interest groups, but that they can also be a bit more independent, because they are not really too dependent on this political career. But of course, it also can have some downside. But what I think is very important is that we have transparency of where the people come from, what they do besides politics, so that you have a bit these insights. And you also know from where they get their information.
Yeah, you mentioned lobby groups a couple of times. How much influence do lobby groups have in shaping Swiss policy at the, I guess, federal level?
I mean, they have large influence because we have like the system, this consensus system, so we really need to find these compromises, and in the end, in popular votes, it somehow needs to hold the different propositions. They also need to hold the public vote. So there is this pretty long pre-parliamentary stage. So even before the laws and the propositions that they go into parliament, there's this pre-parliamentary phase. And there we have Vernehmlassungen, so the consultations, yeah. And there actually already all the relevant actors that might have some large interest in this special law or whatsoever, they are asked to say what they think about that. So it's already there in this pre-parliamentary phase that they are actually involved. And then, of course, the lobby groups, that's actually what's then often seen more negative, is that they are then also involved in the parliamentary stage. So when it's already in the parliament, the proposal, there the largest problem that is often seen is that we have these different committees. And so, for instance, I worked for the parliamentary service for the committees of the transport and telecommunication. And then just the proposals that enter the parliamentary stage that are in this field, they will be discussed in the committees before they go into the parliament. And that's where the influence of the lobby groups is then often seen quite negatively, because if you have members in these different committees, for instance, in the what's the health and social policy committee, for instance, and then you have their people, so parliamentarians who are somehow related to some health insurances. And then they just bring these interests directly into the committee. So that means these committees, they are quite influential, because they then make proposals to the council. For instance, the committee of transport and telecommunication of the National Council, that then makes a proposal to the National Council whether to accept or to reject, or what to do with the proposal. And if you have in these committees who are quite influential, you have very special interest groups in it, then that might be a bit problematic. And that's what's quite often discussed.
I guess when I think of lobby groups, I think of the funding which they can give certain political parties to influence their decision making. You didn't mention financial incentives through lobby groups. Do you think that's also what happens in Switzerland?
Yeah, I mean, I would need to check again from what, but we have like new transparency laws, I think, where you see, I mean, the politicians, they have to say which mandates they have besides their mandate in politics. And I don't remember exactly how it's defined. But I mean, of course, money is also an important topic. I mean, if you have a very important mandate for some health insurance, and then you are sitting in the committee for health and social policy, then of course that's what you
You can
decide.
join the dots. I see.
I mean, that's clear.
Mm.
And I also quite often discuss what influence the money has in the initiatives and the campaigning, etc. And they're also, yeah, of course, money always has a bit of has an influence.
One thing I haven't asked you about, which I also found quite interesting, was suffrage and civic participation. So, Switzerland is quite famously the last country in Europe to allow women to vote. Why do you think it takes so long? Is it to do with the fact that it's a direct democracy?
Yeah. Yes. So so that was actually, that those were some of the questions that I was also tackling during my PhD. So there I tackled some questions about the extensions of voting rights, especially because Switzerland was that famous because of the late enfranchisement of women. And I don't know if you have also read that, like, some canton, so Appenzell Road, even had to be forced in the end by the federal court, when women were already allowed on the federal level to vote, to also give them the voting rights on the cantonal level. And yeah, I mean, that's what we did also in some research, is actually that we found that people, so it matters how much influence people have to lose, which might make them a bit more reluctant in sharing voting rights with new groups. So, I mean, if you have less power to lose, then probably you're more open in sharing it also with others. But if you have a bit larger say, then maybe it might make you a bit more reluctant. So I think it has a lot to do with direct democracy. I also think it has a lot to do with the how direct democracy was implemented, because the canton who was the last up until in the road, they have, so for them it was not a ballot vote on this voting right extensions, but they actually have like the Landsgemeinde, which is like the town hall. So people meet to discuss on the topics and decide, and then you actually just need to you meet on a place, and then you raise your hand to say yes, I agree or not. And I can imagine, I mean, there it's quite difficult, maybe also for men, to stand there and say, yeah, I would like to give women the right to vote, and I would like to make that we have a bit lesser say. But I mean, it's yeah. I think it has a lot to do with direct democracy, of course, because it also makes things just much slower in general.
I guess it's giving up power in order of fairness, I suppose. Are there any other... So I'm just thinking that was one of the key changes to who is allowed to vote. And is there anything else currently as a hot topic or a current affair which is related to who is allowed to vote?
Yeah, I mean, there are always, because, yeah, I mean, the society is changing a bit. And nowadays we still have it's still the case that people that are Swiss and are over 18 years old, they are allowed to vote. So if you need to be a holder of Swiss passport for the federal level, and that's why it's quite often discussed whether the voting rights should be extended to new groups, especially to people without a Swiss passport, but who have been here for a while and pay taxes here. And yeah, because they make up quite a huge population now in Switzerland. And that's why it's quite often discussed. Also, mostly on the cantonal levels, there are some cantons that have introduced voting rights for non-citizens. And yeah, that's quite often debated as well. And also the voting age 16, quite often debated, whether one should lower the age threshold to 16.
16.
And there is also
God,
16, yeah.
I didn't know anything when I was 16. I'm not sure that would have been a good idea.
Yeah, there is, I think, Glarus, one canton who has that already. They have voting age 16. But yeah, of course, I mean, there are pros and cons. And I mean, also, I think what's just important is that the people who decide should be the ones who pay tax and should be the ones who have to live with the decisions. And I mean, there one needs to define what one thinks, what we think who these groups are. I mean, I think, like, if there, yeah, there are for sure some arguments in favor and against.
I love what you just said. Everywhere else in the world, it seems to be chaotic because this isn't the case. People are living with consequences due to government decisions which they did not vote for. So in principle, yeah, it sounds like, yeah, whatever the people want, they get. So I think that's really nice.
Whatever the people want, they get.
I mean, that's an oversimplification, but I think...
very oversimplified,
yeah,
but yeah.
Just closing up now, Patricia, I wanted to ask you, was there anything else that you're working on or involved in at the moment which you find particularly interesting, worth sharing?
What else? Yeah, so I think the militia system was one of the things I'm going to work on soon a bit more, because I really think that's, yeah, as you said, it's a very special case. Switzerland, like the many people that take over the responsibilities in the state, and how to make sure that that's also the case in the future. I mean, I think that's something I really think is important. And yeah, otherwise, we talked about a lot. I think we did not talk a lot about federalism, though, but another time.
Another time. That's for round 2. Patricia, this has been a really fascinating conversation. Yeah. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for listening. If you did enjoy the episode and you want to support me, it would mean a lot if you could rate the episode and follow the podcast on your favorite platform. It really helps the show grow and reach more people. I'll see you in the next episode.